So we're on to this thing of performance monitoring. And I think this is really where, in the last year, my ideas have changed more than anything. And largely as a result of taking on a new client about a year ago. It's the one in the educational software field. And he was quite frank. He said, firstly, I don't want you just to report rankings to me because they're meaningless. I want to know what traffic I'm generating from the keywords you've selected and whether that matches your expectations. You've given me a figure for how many searches a day there should be. You should be able to tell me whether, when I get to 5th place, I'm getting the right amount of traffic from it. And he said, the other thing is I don't want to waste my money and your time flogging keywords which are clearly not working. So if something gets into the top 10 and that all the data says it's not bringing any meaningful traffic, we'll junk it sooner rather than later. As I say, this was about a year ago, and it was very difficult to try and put all the data together because you were missing one critical element, which was the number of impressions, the number of times the site had appeared in the search results. You could have your keyword discovery or your word tracker data for what was expected, but without actually knowing how many times people have searched on those terms, you couldn't really work down to a click-through rate. And we tried and we faddled around, and to be honest, it didn't really go anywhere. The other particular problem we had with him was he'd got two sites, one in the UK serving the UK market, one in the US serving the US market. Okay. Now, even the UK site proved something of a difficulty in terms of which data set you look at to report what are meaningful rankings. You'll be aware that there's google.co.uk and searchers can select either UK-only results or they can select web results. That's what the interface looked like a year ago, with radio buttons underneath the search box allowing people to switch between the two. And at that stage, somewhere between 20 and 40% of people would select UK-only results. Okay. Now, in the run-up to Christmas last year, we had the new style Google interface where the radio buttons went and the selector for the different countries was swapped down to this side here. And overnight, the number of people who looked at UK-only results dropped to under 5%. Okay. We'd been monitoring both sets of results, but at the point when they changed that look, it was clear that the only meaningful data set to look at in terms of your rankings is the UK, the web, which is the sort of default that people see and don't seem to swap away from, or at least the non-technically savvy don't swap away from. Okay. What about the US site? Has anyone got anything targeting overseas markets? Okay. How do you deal with it in terms of how the site's set up and the...
Well, we've got a fairly new website that's only been running for about 2 months now. On the UK, we're now finally coming through. We're slowly creeping up to page one.
Yeah.
On the .com, we are getting in there, but we're still very low. I need to invest more in that. That's actually one of the reasons why I'm here.
Yeah.
Too.
Okay. One of the big issues is Google doesn't have an American version of Google. It has them for all the other countries, and it has this rather sort of gung-ho attitude, and we'll use the .com for the Americans. They can't select for US-only sites. They just have the .com that we see. But if you do the same search from the UK and the US, you get completely different results because of IP geolocation issues. And so we got in this really tricky situation where we were trying to run reports using the staff in their Illinois office who were having to go through and do the really tedious manual looking through Google to see where the rankings were. And that went on for 2 or 3 months. And I thought there must be a better way. I mean, Google don't confess to any way where you can see the sort of geographical results where you aren't. But in fact, if you add a query string parameter, so that's the so this is the query, that's the query string. And if you add the parameter ampersand GL for geolocation equals US, you can sit in the UK and you can see the same results that the Americans see. And it works for all the countries, okay? So it is quite useful if you're operating in an overseas market to have that ability. And we did test it quite rigorously against them run from being done in Illinois initially, just to make sure it really works, and it does. What you need to do is you put the search term in, press search, and then you put your insertion point in there, go to the end and type the and GL equals US, and then it stays there for all your subsequent searches. Okay, so you only need to put it in once. Okay, so AU for Australia and all the 2-letter identifiers work. Okay, so we were struggling a bit with this idea of trying to get from numbers of searches through to click-through rates. And then in the summer of this year, Webmaster Tools actually sort of revamped what data it was giving you under the Search Queries tab, and it has really helpfully gone and done the whole thing for you. Because for each search term for which the site ranks, it gives you the number of impressions, the number of times the site has been in the search results. It gives the number of clicks, the number of times visitors who click through to the site. It even works out the click-through percentage for you, and it gives you your average rank over the time period you select. And you've got a drop down here, so you can go to any individual country where you're getting any amount of traffic at all. And if you click on the expand on the search term, it expands it even more helpfully to show you what positions you occupied and what the click-through rates were for those. So if you've got an idea before you start of what you expect the click-through rates to be, and we worked from that leaked AOL data, which has sort of 42% for number 1 position, and then it drops down fairly quickly so that 6 to 10 are broadly 3%. You can very quickly pick up anomalies where the search term just isn't performing as it should be. I have to say at this point, what you do find is if you've got a search term that gets to first position and you've got an attractive title and description, you can hit 55–60% click-through rates. And the converse of that is that the lower positions, so the sort of 6 to 10, I would have said were more like 2% average rather than 3%. Okay.